and so forth with ivermectin. So at high doses, ivermectin is toxic.
Okay, thank you. And one more, just one quick one.
Quickly.
How many more booster shots do you think we'll need, the population will need, in order to move on from COVID?
No one has a crystal ball. There are a number of cases of vaccines where after a third shot, your immunity is quite sustained, sustained for many months or years. No one in the world knows whether it will be 3 years' time or never, or whether it's 1 year time or whatever. But what has been encouraging is that even with the standard course of 2 doses, immunity has been maintained for quite a significant period. And so the booster shot is really a case of providing even additional support, especially against infection. The protection after 2 shots against serious illness or hospitalisation is still extremely high.
So we won't necessarily need to mandate third shots, in your view?
Well, I don't think anyone is talking about mandating third shots.
We're not talking about mandating.
I can quote the Minister for Health, because he and I were at a press conference this morning. He was asked, does he believe third shots will be mandated? And he said he doesn't see a reason at this stage. So I'm actually quoting Minister Hunt on that.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Senator Rennick. Senator Green.
Thank you very much. And I also have some questions about misinformation around vaccinations and COVID vaccines. Just to begin though, Professor Skerritt, what powers does the TGA have in regards to misinformation around medicines?
So our powers, we are the regulator of medicines advertising. Now, advertising does have a broad meaning. So, for example, a doctor promoting a medicine more broadly to the general public does form advertising. If you're looking at particular individuals making comments about
like if a
number
Liberal
of deaths
senator
or whatever,
posts something on Facebook, for example.
or some of that material on Facebook, it is not advertising as such. It's actually, it's not promoting a particular product. If you don't have a particular product that you're saying, take this, it's actually not advertising. However, we are aware of the fact that it is, in our view, and we've said this in press release, dangerously misleading. And I have written to both the Australian CEOs... I have some questions about that. Yep. I got in before you. We have written to the Australian CEOs of Facebook as well as YouTube and explained that, because we've got a good working relationship with them, more with people promoting things illegally, but we've said, well, while this doesn't constitute advertising, we'd ask them to consider strongly whether they should continue to host those posts. Now, it will be their decision.
Right. You've previously written to Mr Palmer warning him that his pamphlets distributed to Australian households pose an unacceptable threat to the health of Australians. That's right, isn't it?
Senator, I have to be a little bit careful about commenting on my correspondence with Mr Palmer. On the 5th of July, I received a notice through his lawyers of an intention to claim damage as a preface to being taken to the Supreme Court of the State of Queensland with defamation proceedings against me and the department. So I'm unable to say too much on that.
Well, I'm happy for you to get some advice from the clerk, but I do think your comments in a Senate hearing, if I'm
able
asking...
to repeat what I said on record. It's just that with the possibility of defamation proceedings, we have been advised to not talk about relationships with a particular individual. And
can we get some advice about that, Chair, about what Mr Skerritt is able to say in a Senate? Because the Senate is requiring you to give answers, and I believe there's some form of protection for that.
Senator, if you ask...
I want to make sure you're comfortable in answering.
No. If you ask me a factual question, I'll advise through the Chair whether it's a question I would like to seek advice on before I answer. Sure. It may be that I'm entirely comfortable answering it.
But in regards to correspondence, you've written to Mr Palmer directly?
Correct, and that correspondence has been circulated in many people's letterboxes, probably in their recycling bins now.
Your correspondence or
yes,
Mr Palmer's?
My correspondence to Mr Palmer was also circulated, I believe, by Mr Palmer and his response to me through a number of flyers included with grocery advertising.
It's pretty public, right.
That's in the public domain.
Has he stopped distributing pamphlets in people's letterboxes after your correspondence?
I I do believe there were pamphlets distributed after I wrote to Mr Palmer. I think that's again on the public record.
Yeah. You also wrote, I believe, to the Grant Broadcasters Network about radio advertisement that Mr Palmer was paying for and running that posed the same threat. And those advertisements, as I understand it, they were discontinued by the network.
That was a decision by Grant.
Yep.
Certainly there was no pressure from the department threatening the broadcaster with legal action or anything of the case. Sure. They made their decision. In fact, I think they may have even made it before they received my letter. You've written to the member for Hughes as well, I believe. Was that in regards to text messages that the member for Hughes was sending? Again, it was in his capacity as the new leader of the United Australia Party, and it was in the case of, and again this is in the public domain, there were incomplete extracts from the database of adverse event notifications, which, if read, would have suggested that there were several hundred deaths causally, i.e. caused by, the vaccine. And we wrote to him explaining that we believed that it was quite misleading, dangerously misleading, and we also said that we had sought legal advice. In fact, we wrote to him through our lawyers, and again we've said this in the public domain, that we were seeking legal advice about potential copyright action in the Commonwealth Copyright Act 1968. Okay, but when it comes to Facebook and YouTube, as you've preempted, you have, well, the Shadow Minister for Health, Mark Butler, wrote to you about these concerns. Yes, yes. You've subsequently written to YouTube and Facebook. Correct. We know that United Australia Party has already spent $1.2 million on YouTube advertising in less than 2 months, and that the ads encourage people to watch videos on the UAP YouTube channel, which implicitly question the safety and approval of vaccines. What did you say to Facebook and YouTube about these concerns, and what did you ask them to do? Simply, and I'm more than happy, I don't think there's any problem with tabling the letter. If you could, I would be very happy to. Essentially, as I said, to paraphrase it, we said that this doesn't constitute advertising, and so we don't have advertising powers. We welcome the fact that we've worked with a number of social media channels successfully when, for example, unproven treatments have been promoted, and we've welcomed their cooperation. We invite them to consider the material that that group has used through their channels and for them to decide. But I don't think there's any harm in tabling those letters. Now, you say it doesn't constitute advertising, but that's under your Act. Correct. Right. So, Minister, is the government considering making changes so what we now know as advertising, I mean, $1.2 million on YouTube, that's advertising, right?
Well, Senator, I'll have to take that specific question on notice, because that wouldn't be a question for this portfolio. It would be a question for the Minister for Communications. So I'm happy to take that on notice and come back to you.
It's having an impact.
Senator, I honestly am not arguing with you in any sense with respect to this. Just want to make sure that you and the committee have the appropriate information. And so, you know, don't take my answer as being any form of pushback at all. We all understand the importance of good information with respect to vaccines, the rollout and treatments for COVID. We are very much supportive and have confidence, full confidence in the work of the TGA and Professor Skerritt, and so very prepared to support that work.
It's particularly a concern for Indigenous communities, as evidence. I think you provided that evidence previously. Minister Wyatt was conducting an interview in regards to Indigenous jab rates, and he said that we've got to get rid of the anti-vaxxers who are peddling mistruths to Aboriginal communities who are extremely vulnerable. The the journalists asked him, are they risking lives? And Minister Wyatt went on to say, oh, they're risking lives and they're risking the lives of vulnerable communities. Are these, the people who are spreading this misinformation, are they risking the lives of Australians?
Senator, I won't try to venture into the land of opinion, but I think, as you've heard eminently throughout this and earlier hearings, vaccinations, just simply by looking at the Southwestern Sydney data, the Victorian data, vaccinations have saved many lives. So if people are discouraged from being vaccinated based on false, while respecting the ability of people to make their own views, if people are discouraged from being vaccinated based on false, incorrect, fabricated information, then lives are being risked.
Thank you. Minister, did you have something to add to that?
Oh, I was actually going to agree with that, and I know that the Vaccine Task Force, who we heard some questions to them this morning, are working very hard at a community level to dispel that misinformation from wherever it's coming from, because it is having an impact on vaccination rates, and I agree with Professor Skerritt, it has the potential to cost lives, and so that's why so much effort's being made by the government to counteract that misinformation very specifically at a local level.
Just on the efforts to counteract that information, I've got a couple of questions on that, but Liberal Senator Rennick, Senator from Queensland, has said on his Facebook in regards to Pfizer, when are these snake oil salesmen going to be called out? The Pfizer shot doesn't deserve to be called a vaccine. Minister, are there comments like this risking the lives of Australians, and have you spoken to Senator Rennick about these comments?
Well, Senator, I haven't seen those comments specifically until now. I don't agree with those comments. I think quite clearly you've heard the perspective from the Chief Medical Officer with respect to the positive impact that vaccines are having in the community. I've expressed that myself in the chamber, so I don't agree with those. And I wouldn't support those comments.
This is a member of your government, though, Minister. What action are you going to take in regards to comments like those?
Well, I'm happy to follow up on your advice to me today in respect of that, because they're certainly not comments that I support. They're not supported by the evidence, so I'm happy to follow up personally with my colleague, and quite frankly, I'll make a general message to all my colleagues. The evidence is absolutely clear with respect to the positive impact that vaccinations are having. We're seeing it throughout the community, and I don't support any comments from anyone, quite frankly, that seek to diminish the reality of the positive impact that vaccines are having in respect of COVID.
Queensland's still in the midst of achieving the targets that we need for vaccines, so the importance of having truthful information about vaccines out there in Queensland at the moment is paramount. Mr. Rennick has also posted on Facebook in regards to young people getting the vaccine that you can't protect the weak by destroying the strong, and made reference to adverse, as you've seen today, adverse effects of the vaccine that may or may not be truthful. Minister, will this misinformation be stopped?
Well, I've said to you quite clearly I don't support that. You've heard evidence.
No, that's a different question.
Well, Senator,
Are we going to have a member of the government, a Liberal senator for Queensland, out there over the next couple of weeks during a really crucial time for Queensland to get vaccinated, talking about the vaccine in this way, spreading misinformation, stopping people from getting vaccinated? And if you think it's
Senator
a discrete...
Green, your time is about to expire.
Sure. If you think it's a discrete issue, I'll put this to you. I don't make a habit of looking at Senator Rennick's Facebook page, but I did last night because I was preparing for this hearing. He posted a Facebook video yesterday about adverse effects on vaccines. In less than 12 hours, 31,000 people had viewed that video. What are you going to do to stop this?
Senator, I would encourage Senator Rennick to post the evidence that he's been provided today, which actually dispels what I assume is the same information, because it's not true. I would hope that he would take the evidence given by Professor Skerritt today to correct that information. My message would be to everyone that has the opportunity to listen to the evidence given by Professor Skerritt today, because I agree with you, Senator, that it's important that we have appropriate and factual information in support of vaccination, because I know, Professor Skerritt and the officials here know the positive impact that it's having in our community now. It is measurable. It is real.
Just one
Thank you
last
very
question
much,
and I'll
Senator
find. I've
Green.
just
We'll
got
now
one
turn
last
to...
question.
No, the time
You
has
were very
expired.
generous with your time to Senator
The time
Rennick.
has most definitely
These are very
expired.
important questions.
We're going to go to Senator Waters for the last few moments before the lunch break.